I'm Meredith Setser, and this is For Art's Sake. My name is Meredith Setser, and I'm here at Parkland College. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the exhibition I had here in July. The piece standing behind me is called Diaspora Coalescence, and it's a large installation composed of print and handmade felt. The piece is based on sort of natural landscape formations. I moved around a lot when I was a child, mostly throughout the Midwest, and lived in a lot of locations that edged swamps or lakes or riverbanks, and a lot of times these memories of the childhood locations sort of seep into my work. Also, I have lived, I've had the opportunity to live around a lot of cave formations and grottos and shrines up in northern Michigan, which is more of like a touristy location. And so there's also cave formations that kind of permeate in a lot of the work seen here. I'm trained as a printmaker, but as you can see, most of the prints are on these fabric forms. The last 20 years of my life I've spent working with handmade felt, which is a really interesting material. Felt is probably the oldest textile form known to mankind. There have been pieces of felt found in China and Mongolia, dating probably 30,000 years ago. It's a really interesting material because it's a very simple material to make. You don't need a lot of equipment. Basically, all you need is a source of animal fiber. It has to be animal-based fiber because it has to have a scale along the hair shaft. If it doesn't have that scale, it won't interlock and form the fabric. You use a little bit of moisture and a lot of agitation and beating to get those fibers to lock together to create your felt. A lot of people have inadvertently and accidentally made felt in their washing machines. When you buy like a really expensive cashmere sweater or merino sweater, and you put it on too hot of a cycle and your sweater shrinks down to like a baby size garment. That's what felting is. You're shrinking that fiber into a dense material. I enjoy felt, not just because of the history behind it. There's a lot of legends behind it. One really interesting legend has to do with the Crusades, and Saint Clemente, who was a monk during the Crusades, supposedly was walking home, and he had really sore feet, and he found a piece of wool on the ground, and he stuck it in his sandals, and through walking several miles and having sweaty, dirty feet, the wool compressed and it made felt. And that's one of the stories surrounding the invention of felt. We know now, today, that story is false because felt was founded, several thousand years before the Crusades. So I like the history behind the material, but I also like the tactility of the material, the softness. I'm a hands-on kind of a person. And I've always been sort of attracted to fabric and, the crafts of like knitting and spinning and that sort of thing. So felt was, it attracted me right from the beginning because of those properties. What's great for me in felt, to me, is, its ability to become very three-dimensional. And it's a simple process, so you can make vast quantities of it very quickly. And when I go to, I like to work with small pieces of the material and then combine them together to create sort of these layered landscape forms. It's a great material because it's practical, and that's kind of a silly thing to say, but as an artist who, just has a very small studio, I really like the fact that I can store it easily. It compresses, it's not breakable, everything gets stored in large garbage bags. That's wonderful for me because I only have like an 8 by 10 foot studio that I work out of. So in order to do large work, it has to be practical, it has to be storable, and so that's a very important aspect. Usually when I do an installation show, such as this, I have a little bit of an idea, I do some research, but I don't do a lot of diagrams or drawings of how I'm going to set up the show. When I started doing this, I did that sort of planning, but there's sort of like a disconnect to me between the drawing and then being in the actual space. And I would find that 9 times out of 10, I would abandon those initial drawings and just have a reaction to the space. So a lot of it is just like, I have all these different materials. They're kind of like my wardrobe, I guess, in a way. I carry this stuff from gallery to gallery, and then I react to the particular space. In Parkland's case, I really love the gallery. They had painted this wall pink, and I don't have an opportunity to work on a bright wall very often, so I was immediately attracted to that color. The color pink was so intense, at least at first I was a little bit fearful of it, but then I was like, how many times do you get the opportunity to work on such a beautiful, vibrant colored wall? So I just went for it and started to compose the piece. I also really enjoyed this space because it's a very cozy, intimate space. A lot of times I feel like my work gets lost in a space that's large, and with this particular gallery, it had a very warm feeling to me from the get-go, which I felt like was enhanced by the color as well. Talked a little bit about the felt, but I should mention printmaking as well. I am trained as a printmaker. I feel like I'm a dabbler in fiber and felt making. Even though I've been doing it for quite some time, I haven't had any formal training in that outside of workshops. But I actually attended university for printmaking, and I have a master's from the University of Wisconsin. Presently, I actually teach it also at Heron School of Art in Indianapolis, and I mostly work with the media of etching and screen printing. Pretty much every piece of felt in this show is handmade by me, much like an artist would make their own paper. I make my own substrates. And then I print on every piece, often the front and the back of the fabrics. This particular piece has etching on the front, and then there are screen printed elements on the back. All of the patterns in this particular instance, this piece was referred to sort of like a migration of human culture, and I did a couple of plates of different images of text and mathematical figures, along with like earth forms and patterns to sort of represent like this molding or this aggregation of civilization. And you can see those patterns reflected in many of these felts. Some of the patterning you see here are just referencing biology and geography and geology and stuff like that as well. So it's kind of like a big aggregation of all of this information into one piece. In that way, you know, at times I have thought that the cave, which a lot of times my work references, is very suitable for that idea because, of course, some of our earliest remnants of text and writings and pictograms are found in cave settings. So sometimes I feel like that formation kind of plays into that as well. Not on a conscious level, though. I am trained as a 2D artist, but as you can see, I work a lot with more three-dimensional and environment forms. The installation form really appeals to me because of its malleability. I've worked with many, many fragments. I'll pick a couple of them up just to show you, you know, how this is, none of this is permanent. Most of it is not even sewn together. That kind of gives me like the flexibility to rearrange the forms, to you know, install them in vastly different ways from gallery to gallery. And that lack of permanence keeps it really exciting for me. As I was saying in the beginning, I really respond to different settings, different situations, different galleries, and I think I would get really, really bored if I set these up the same way every time I went to do a show. And also, I'm an artist who, I come up with an idea and I tend to work with the same idea or similar ideas for many years. I'm not quick on my feet. I have such a chaotic life that a lot of times I don't have a lot of time to generate new ideas. So it's very comforting for me to work with the same objects, the same fabrics, and just build onto it and have it sort of evolve naturally over time. You know, and then eventually some of the pieces might get edited out, or they might be given away. On occasion I might sell something. So they kind of come into my life and flow through my life, you know, pretty easily. But that's the way I like to work with the installation pieces, at least. Since I am a printmaker, I do also do a lot of two-dimensional pieces, which are generated a little more spontaneously. They're quicker. They're a way for me to work through ideas, and you know, if I actually have time to generate new ideas, the installations are not so much. I almost feel like they're their own sort of thing. I just kind of like direct them, and they have their own identity and their own growth and their own presence, I guess.
This is a foundations class. This is kind of the gateway class. Drawing is applicable to anything that you do within art and design. It's about visual language. It's about learning how to think visually and communicate visually. When you draw, you take the three-dimensional world and you translate it onto a two-dimensional page. And so you're creating the illusion, the magic of a three-dimensional form on a flat surface. And that's the main thing that drawing one is about, and it takes some time to learn that.
It's really nice, like when you learn the techniques and how to apply those into actual application, and the output is amazing. Anybody can take classes, anybody can draw. If you have that passion, if you feel like doing it, just go for it.
In drawing too, there are more issues of content, and we do go into color pretty quickly, and it's a lot more individuality. The artist can come out, and again, it's the exploration of technique.
She really pushes you to go outside the box or try things that you wouldn't normally do on your own. I found that the professors here are really interested in the students and take the time out with them, and they don't try to push their style of art on you. They just try to refine your own skills, and they want you to keep, you know, your twist on it.
This class is a little bit more expressive. I mean, individual-wise, you can express yourself a little bit more, and everybody has their own little style, so it's a little bit more laid back.
Drawing one focuses very much on structure and how to view the world, as in like in a very realistic way. We get to play with just all sorts of mediums and papers. It's fun. It's time consuming, but it's very worth it if you really love to do it.
It's a teaching-focused place, so you're going to get personal attention more so than you will at other institutions, and I think that's the advantage.
What can your phone do?
Okay, so this piece is titled Angry Dragon, and it is the first major felt piece I felt like I did once I was out of grad school. I had been working with felt for a while as a graduate student in installation form, but I felt compelled to make a 2D sort of topographical landscape form with the felts, something that was more permanent, something that I could, you know, keep, actually consider more of a traditional, you know, piece of art rather than something that's more impermanent. The title refers to many things. In grad school, I was working more with animals, and I was researching a lot of like new discoveries in biotechnology, and that's where a lot of the biological dermis patterns apply. After examining these patterns outside of grad school, I was sort of surprised at the relationship and the similarities between them, those patterns, and then patterns found in rock formations. And so I started to think of my work as more of a landscape than maybe less than a conglomerate of animal parts. Angry Dragon refers to a little bit of like a Chinese philosophy, how in ancient China they kind of considered that, you know, animals are very important to their mythologies and their religion, and in parts of China they thought that their landscape was composed of dragons, and you know, they would use the dragon as a reason or an explanation for why certain things would happen in their world, like earthquakes and storms and stuff like that. Dragons, of course, being an art teacher, dragons are kind of like a cheesy cliche sort of image that I try to, you know, steer my students away from gently when they're freshmen. But I also have a very deep love for cliche images and fantasy and that sort of thing. So this piece was kind of my way of bringing a dragon into my work in a more abstract way. So there's a lot of different things. There's you know, the goofy, sort of less serious side of the piece, and then there's the actual research, you know, the more serious university thinking that goes on into it. So it's a piece I've had for many years, and it's one that I'll probably keep forever. You know, nobody's offered to buy it for one thing, but I also really, I really love this piece, and I give away a lot of work, but since it was the first one that sort of examined those ideas, I'm gonna hang on to it. So this is Cruel Wasting Disease, and this is a two-plate etching that I made, I believe, in 2009, 2010. This piece has gone through many different states and different changes. One of the main aspects that appeals to me about printmaking is that you can compose a drawing on a piece of metal and you can print one version of it and live with it for a while, but then you can always go back into the plate, change it, add things, carve it, and pull a lot of different versions of the same idea. And in fact, you can really, really mutate that idea into something altogether different. This is probably about I'd say this might be the 6th version of this particular plate. As I said, there are 2 plates in this composition, but the one is mostly a background color plate, and then there's the main image of these sort of like decorative motifs. The original image was initially printed on a deer skin, and at the time I was investigating this sort of crisis that was happening in Wisconsin. A wasting disease had invaded the deer herds, and it was a horrible disease. It would cause the deer to starve to death, basically, and they would lose weight and eventually starve to death no matter what they ate. And this was a disease that the dairy farmers they were terrified it was going to spread to the cow herds in Wisconsin. So the state government arranged a large deer hunt, and I think it was over the course of a year, and I believe this took place in 2002, 2003. They pretty much wiped out much of the deer herd in the state. It's since come back because deer pretty much breed like rabbits. But at the time, I was pretty saddened by this event. So I did this image in response to it. The wasting disease is a neurological type of condition, so that's why you see these more spinal images in the composition. To me it's a spine, but a lot of times people have also said they look like nerve cells or something along that lines. The round motifs were referencing targets, and of course, art has this very long history with the use of the target, and as a printmaker, one of my heroes is Jasper Johns, so from time to time, I bring the target into my work. I don't think there's a printmaker alive who hasn't worked with the target, but I made my targets a little more decorative, because of my interest in pattern and textiles. And I was also looking at a lot of Middle Eastern motifs at that time too. So it kind of took a serious subject matter and took it out of its initial state. And the more I worked with the plate, the more these different images sort of grew, and I feel like it's kind of come into its own. It's really stepped away from that initial idea. So that's that one. I have done quite a few prints where I explore biology. This was, like I said, one where I was examining spinal imagery. These pieces here, I was also looking at cells, spores, a lot of fungus, and they also, I feel really sort of show a conglomeration of growth and how these forms merge. They're beautiful, but they're also insidious on some level, because of course a lot of growth of cells, uncontrolled growth can lead to cancer and other diseases. So they're sort of superficially beautiful, but I always feel like there's a little bit of sort of a repulsive sort of aspect to them. This particular piece is probably a little more intentional than the other ones. This one, actually, some of the decorative images are sort of like the sort of like a bilateral section of different animals. You see there's some horse jaws in here that have been sort of combined into a more decorative sort of mandala-like object. There's teeth. There are all sorts of recognizable body parts if you were into anatomy and that sort of thing. So I feel like this one, you know, references science and biology a little more directly than maybe some of these, which are more abstract, maybe a little more intuitive. This is my installation, Floreal Stratum. This piece sort of originated from more of a personal event in my life. My grandmother passed away the year, my paternal grandmother passed away the year that I composed this piece. And I was close to her, but we had kind of drifted apart, as you know people do as they get older. And she loved my two-dimensional work, but she hated my installation work. She just did not understand it, thought it was a waste of time. But you know, I was kind of going through this mourning period when I was making this show, or this piece for a show in Pennsylvania. She was an interesting person. She was uneducated from Kentucky, but she was one of the smartest people I've ever met. Because she read all the time. She could do like the New York Times Friday crossword in 30 minutes. She was just like really, really bright. And she also, the three things I remember from her is, you know, she was great at trivia, she loved crochet, and she did flower arrangements, but only with artificial flowers because she was allergic to the real things. So when she died, she was very poor, but there were a bunch of like cases and cases and cardboard boxes of these artificial flowers in her basement, and you know, that nobody wanted them. They were just going to be tossed. So I was like, heck, I want them. I'll take them. And I took them and I did a bunch of works with them that kind of led into this. None of those actual artificial flowers are present in this particular piece, but if you look closely, you'll see a lot of floral images, plant-like motifs in it, and it all kind of stemmed from that body of work that I did about her life, and you know, her interests, because I thought she was a pretty fascinating person, as most people think their grandparents are. This piece, so like I said, it's personal. Also, it again, sort of that subconscious memory of, you know, living in, you know, Michigan, growing up in swamps, which, you know, are very, very beautiful, but also they smell, there's mosquitoes, it's just, you know, I'm so happy I don't live in Michigan anymore. I can't even tell you. I took some of the nicer elements of the swamp and kind of highlighted it here. You know, the vibrant colors, how a swamp looks when it's in bloom. You know, how swamps in recent years have become more protected, you know, landscape forms. You know, in the past, they would just, you know, bulldoze over a swamp and, you know, build new structures right on top of them. But now our waterways and our swamps are highly protected natural resources.